Okay. Today we're going to look at the fossa, the fossae, the temporal fossa, the infratemporal fossa, and the Pterygopalatine fossa. We have three fossa to look at: temporal, infratemporal, and Pterygopalatine fossa. The fossa of the temporal fossa and infratemporal is basically divided by this zygomatic arch. So basically above the zygomatic arch, there's a depression here, there's a temporal fossa. The fossa that is located below the zygomatic arch, which is somewhere around here. And so all this area here, where my finger is, that's the infratemporal fossa. And Pterygopalatine fossa, this is a fissure. There's a fissure here. Let me take this out. So this is a fissure here, and this is the pterygomaxillary fissure. So we have the pterygoid plate, and then we have the maxilla. In between these two, there's a fissure. Okay, and through that fissure, or basically medial to that fissure, is the Pterygopalatine fossa. So fissure is basically an indication of separation between these two fossa. Lateral to these fossa, to this fissure, the pterygomaxillary fissure. Lateral to it is the infratemporal. Medial to it is Pterygopalatine fossa. Is that understood?
Yep.
So this is what fissure is this?
Pterygopalatine.
Pterygomaxillary fissure. It's basically located between the maxilla and pterygoid process. That's it. Pterygoid process of the sphenoid bone.
Yeah.
So it's in between these two, but also it's pterygomaxillary fissure. So medial to this fissure is the Pterygopalatine fossa. Lateral to it, it's this area here, which is the infratemporal fossa. Okay, so let's look at these fossas one by one. First, we have the temporal fossa. Okay, so temporal fossa. So this is the boundary of temporal fossa. So we have the superior temporal line here, just like this is the boundary of the squamous part of the temporal bone, the upper part, and the posterior part. Again, the line goes this way, superior, posterior. Entry is these two areas, which is what? You tell me. So we have two parts on the anterior part of the temporal fossa. This part here is what do you call this? This is part of the frontal bone. So what's the specific name for that?
Zygomatic process.
Zygomatic process of frontal bone. And this? Frontal process of zygomatic bone, right? So it's part of the frontal part of zygomatic. So these two bones come together, they form the entry boundary of the temporal fossa. The inferior, as you can see, it's this area here. It's a zygomatic arch, basically. The medial border of the zygomatic arch forms the inferior boundary. So this whole area is what? Temporal fossa. So what do we have in the temporal fossa? What's the importance of this? So basically we have the skin. So when we talk about the skin, we talk about the scalp, right? So scalp basically covers the area. Scalp. SCALP stands for what? S. Skin. L.
Loose connective tissue.
Okay. No, it's C, not L. S. Skin. C. Connective tissue. L, loose connective tissue. Okay, A, there's an A there. Okay. It's not loose connective tissue, man. You got me mixed up. Okay, so SCA. A is? Aponeurosis. Aponeurosis or Gallia aponeurotica. Gallia aponeurotica. So that's scalp. L now, you say it now. Loose connective tissue, right. And P is? Periosteum, or it's also referred to as the pericranium, right? Pericranium or periosteum, right? Pericranium or periosteum. So all these, so the first three layers are really attached to each other. The skin, and then the SC is what? Connective tissue, right? So it's that connective tissue is basically the fatty tissue. Okay, it's subcutaneous, but it's really increased the amount of fat there. So you have the connective tissue and aponeurosis, the gallia. So all these three layers are really attached to each other. And so you can move your skin. Everybody move your scalp. back and forth. It's moving, okay? Right, so that's movement. Basically, it is basically it's done by the attachment of the superficial three layers of the scalp. So you have the fatty tissue and the galea, and beneath that you have the loose connective tissue and the periosteum that attaches to the bone. So that's scalp, the skin. Beneath that we have this superficial layer, superficial fascia, that contains the cutaneous nerves. Okay, so we always look at when we examine these areas. So we start from the skin and then go deep. So superficial layer, and we have the deep layers and this deep structure. So the next layer that we come across is the superficial fascia. So what's present in the superficial fascia is the right cutaneous nerves and the superficial veins. Okay, so when we talk about the cutaneous nerves in the temporal region or temporal fossa, we talk about three nerves here that innervates. So most anterior is what? Zygomatico temporal. Zygomatico is a branch off from maxillary nerve, right? That's V2, right? So this is zygomatico temporal, the anterior part of the temporal region, okay? And going all the way to the slightly to the forehead, a lateral part, and then we have at the mid part is auriculotemporal. This is the auricle. Okay, this is the ear. So in front of the ear, at the temporal area, and plus the ear too. That's auriculotemporal. Auriculotemporal is a branch off from V3, right? Is this motor or sensory?
Sensory.
Okay, so it's always sensory. So we're talking about cutaneous, okay? So don't think about it, okay? Just say sensory and cutaneous. Cutaneous is always sensory, and sensory means that it innervates the skin. Okay, that's it. But if it's motor, when we say motor, it has to go to the muscles. Okay, it has to innervate the muscles. That's motor. So we're talking about the superficial area.
How about the branch which goes to the parotid gland?
Which was temperament
From auriculotemporal.
right. So
it is
this is
sensory
no
for
this
the
this is also sensory here. Okay, I'm gonna talk about that. You're talking about the otic ganglion that
Yeah.
comes out. Okay, that's a person. That's motor.
Yeah.
Okay, that's motor. So remind me that we'll talk about that when we get to the otic ganglion. Okay, so that's the auriculotemporal. That's sensory, and it's a branch of
V3.
V3, right, the mandibular branch. And then we have behind the ear, this area here, the area behind the end, the area of the slightly the mastoid area process, and the posterior part of the temporal fossa, which is the which is say it? No, what's the name of the nerve? Lesser occipital, right. So you have to say the nerve. Okay, so but nerve is a branch of the cervical plexus. I'm not asking that. So the nerve's name is lesser occipital. Lesser occipital. Okay, so it's the cervical level is what? C. It's C2. It's only two. It's only two. C2. And look, we talk about the cervical plexus, right? So we have the lesser occipital. We have the greater auriculus. And greater occipital. So we talked about this yesterday too. So the branch that comes out from the cervical plexus, lesser occipital, greater auriculus, right? And however, the greater occipital, we don't include the greater occipital into the cervical plexus. Why?
Because it's containing the dorsal ramus.
Right. So why? Because the greater occipital nerve comes from the dorsal ramus. However, all the